The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hi, and welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet, a weekly program providing you the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually. I'm your host, Kibin, Alleyne. Coming up, May marks the start of Asthma Awareness Month. Two physicians from the Children's Hospital at Montefiore joined me to discuss the effects of this condition in the Bronx. Are Bronxites disproportionately impacted by asthma? After that, the Bronx Documentary Center highlights the United States following 9/11 with their latest exhibition, Look at the USA. Have conversations around war changed over the past decade? Then, organization Girls Inc. NYC hosts their annual Lifting Girls Up Gala. Girls Inc. NYC Vice President of Program joins me to discuss the importance of female empowerment. How will Girls Inc. NYC provide support to girls in vulnerable communities? And finally, the NYC Department of Youth and Community Development Summer Youth Employment Program returns this year, and a representative joins me to discuss the decades-long program. How will SYEP benefit employers this upcoming summer? So please stick around. Open BxRx Tuesday starts now. Welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Kevin Alleyne, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. May marks the start of Asthma Awareness Month. Joining me to discuss the effects of this health condition on residents in the Bronx is Dr. Zoya Treyster and Dr. Laura Conrad of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Now,
thank you for having us.
Yeah, so now asthma is a common health condition in this country affecting about 1 in 13 Americans. How does asthma actually affect our breathing and our overall health?
So asthma is a very common disease. As you said, it affects close to 6 million children in the United States. And it's characterized by recurrent episodes of coughing, wheezing, and chest tightness. And it causes inflammation, swelling, and mucus in the airway. And there are different triggers that cause these asthma exacerbations. That could be the common cold, environmental exposures, smoke exposure, and air pollution. And as you can imagine, this is very challenging for both patients and families and affects their quality of life. It can affect a child's ability to be active, to participate in sports. It can affect their ability to attend school regularly, which in turn can affect parents' ability to go to work. But the good news is that asthma is treatable. By taking preventative medications, we can help prevent these asthma attacks from happening.
Now, according to previous Montefiore research, the rate of asthma prevalence in the Bronx was as high as 25%, and that's the highest rate of all of New York City. Dr. Treyster, is that still the case today?
Yes, depending on the studies, the rate of asthma in the Bronx is somewhere between 15 to 25%. And it certainly definitively is the highest rate in New York City.
Now, why do we continuously see this type of pattern in the Bronx in regards to health outcomes?
So that's a good question. So here in the Bronx, we have a lot of neighborhoods with high poverty rates. And in those neighborhoods, there's a lot of substandard housing, which lends itself to children and families to be exposed to a number of environmental triggers that can exacerbate their asthma and affects the severity and the frequency of their asthma attacks. In addition, these neighborhoods have inequitable exposure to environmental hazards such as air pollution. And we also know that children who live in these higher poverty neighborhoods tend to seek medical care for their asthma at urgent care centers and emergency departments. They're really receiving more episodic care, meaning when they have an asthma attack, they go in, they get treated, but they may not totally address their needs for controller medications and have significant continuity of care to help prevent further and future asthma attacks.
Now, you talked about air pollution contributing to the amount of people that have asthma. How much does that actually impact your risk of getting asthma?
So air pollution contributes to asthma because it activates non-allergic pathways. So it will contribute to airway inflammation in basically everyone. What we know about kids is that there are certain kids and adults who are prone to allergies and therefore at higher risk for the allergic component, but the non-allergic component, the airway activation that happens with pollution, really does happen in everyone. So if you have a genetic predisposition, you're going to be at higher risk for developing asthma. And prior studies have shown that your proximity to certain highways and high pollutant areas will make a difference as well. And as anyone who's been to the Bronx knows, that basically anywhere you go, you're going to be close to one of the three major highways that will run through the Bronx. So certainly air pollution and the proximity to highways, to roads, to cars makes a huge difference in the development of asthma in the patients we see here.
Now, since we're on the topic, what are the most common causes of asthma?
So we know that asthma is multifactorial. Asthma tends to run in families, and so there's certainly a genetic component to asthma. We also know that the most common triggers for asthma include the common cold, viruses, and there's also environmental exposures that can trigger and also lead to the cause of asthma, including indoor allergens like dust, pests like mice and roaches, mold, and secondhand smoke exposure.
Now, you both work at a children's hospital, so I'm really curious. Dr. Treyster, can you tell me, how does asthma affect children in comparison to adults?
So asthma it's a large umbrella term that encompasses several different manifestations of disease. And as time goes on, we're getting much better at differentiating which type of asthma each particular patient has. So there's the classical way of thinking about it is that there is allergic asthma and non-allergic asthma. This is a simplification because a lot of patients will have features of both. But children in general will be prone to the allergic form of asthma. And adults, when they have adult onset asthma especially, will be prone to the non-allergic form. So allergies will influence a child's predisposition, allergies and family history to allergic asthma. We call that the atopic march. You can start off with eczema, with food allergies, allergic rhinitis, and then eventually you will see that many patients that develops into asthma over time. There are other factors that influence asthma. Exercise, you can have just exercise-induced asthma. You can have allergic asthma, and a lot of patients with allergic asthma will still have exercise-induced symptoms. Obesity definitely predisposes children and adults as well to asthma by triggering the non-allergic pathways. And the main difference is that pre-puberty asthma will affect females. So I'll start that sentence over. Pre-puberty asthma will affect males more than females, and then after puberty that switches, and females are more affected into adulthood as well.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that, so thank you so much for sharing. Now, Dr. Conrad, I understand there are some newer biological medications. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. I think Dr. Treyster may be better suited to answer the question.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the biologics are really exciting. It's a really exciting time in asthma because of the development of the biologics. We just had the 6th one approved for asthma. 5 of the 6 are approved in the adolescent or younger ages. And it's really changed the frontier of asthma. So before we just had our inhaled medications, we had some pills you could take. And once we reached the maximum inhalation dosing, a lot of patients were stuck taking oral steroids, which have really broad effects in the body and a lot of side effects that we don't want. With the introduction of biologics, we've been able to put a lot of patients on these injectable medications that target specific molecules. And because of their targeting, they are both very effective, especially for allergic asthma. We have more options for allergic asthma, which, as you recall from a prior question, affects children more, but also really decreases the side effect profile. So a lot of these medications, basically all of the biologics, have way less side effects than the inhaled steroids that patients were previously locked into if their asthma couldn't be controlled. And they are able to live much happier, kind of freer lives because of it. So we have a lot of our patients on these newer medications that are targeted towards their individual profile. So it's like the introduction of individualized asthma control into this sphere, and that's very exciting for all of us.
Now, I know this remains an issue for children of color or those in low-income areas, also known as minorities. What are some steps parents should take to prioritize their overall family health?
So in terms of asthma control, it's really important for children to regularly see their doctor. It's also important for children to take their medications regularly as prescribed. This is the best way to prevent asthma attacks. Also identifying triggers and trying to avoid those triggers. And in terms of overall family health, living a healthy lifestyle is very important. We've seen a great rise in obesity since the pandemic. And so staying physically active and eating a balanced diet as a family is really important, because weight can definitely affect asthma and these children's respiratory disease and their ability to be active and live healthy lives.
Now, are there any Montefiore resources or info sessions available where people can learn a little bit more about how to protect their families?
So you always want to start with your primary care doctor if you have any concerns about your asthma. Dr. Conrad and I are jointly involved in the Asthma Center, which is a really great resource that specifically targets our higher risk patients who have either a lot of hospital visits, a lot of urgent care visits, or in general, we get referrals for patients that just have a hard time controlling their asthma. It is a really great resource for the Bronx community in general, and your primary care doctor can definitely refer you to one of our clinics. And over the course of several visits, you see both allergy and you see pulmonary. And we test you for allergies. We do testing of your lungs, and we craft a plan, an individualized plan for the control of your asthma. And we don't really release you back to primary care until we feel like we've done a really great job of managing your asthma and making sure you have a sustainable plan going forward. So it's a phenomenal resource. We have a health educator, and we have breathing tests available. That we have resources that otherwise aren't necessarily available in the primary care setting, and we can utilize that to really help.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining us to talk about this really important discussion. So we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. All right. Well,
Thank you for having us.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently, learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back. Through 128 photos, the Bronx Documentary Center highlights the United States following 9/11 with their latest exhibition, Look at the USA. BDC founder and executive director Michael Kamber joins me for discussion on this exhibit. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
So for those who aren't familiar, can you start off just telling us a little bit about your organization, the Bronx Documentary Center?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit gallery and education space. We do about 10 exhibitions a year on photography, and we have a big education program, mostly for teenagers and middle schoolers. We've got about 100 students, and we also do some programs for adults as well.
Now, Look at the USA is the latest exhibition at the Bronx Documentary Center, and the exhibit will focus on America post 9/11 while examining wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Can you tell me a little bit more about what viewers can expect to see?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's unique about the show is it's really a history going back almost 20 years to right after 9/11. And Peter Van Achtermel, the photographer, has really worked all over the world. I mean, he worked in dozens and dozens of countries. He covered Iraq and Afghanistan, as you say, and he's also covered other conflicts in the Middle East. But he spent a lot of time looking at the migration crisis, migrants being forced out by conflict, by global warming, by many things, moving into Europe, coming to the United States, being resettled in the US. So there's a whole list of things. He's looked a lot at Black Lives Matter. He followed the demonstrations and protests for many months, Black Lives Matter. And he also covered the election of Biden and Trump. So there's just a huge, really recent history, like a 20-year history of the United States. It's really fascinating.
The BDC often puts a lens on America, often showing some raw and harsh realities in our country. What draws you to those types of stories?
Well, we try to find the right balance. I mean, we try to show positive stories as well. We show a lot of stories from the Bronx, but we think what's going on around the world is of interest to our community. There's American foreign policy that emanates from our communities and affects our communities. And we think, we've had many discussions here. We use the photography really as a jumping off point, and people come in and have discussions and debates about this, and hopefully become better informed about things that are really important to America and to our community here in the Bronx.
So I'm happy that you kind of brought up debates because this exhibit explores crucial social and political issues. What were some of the highlighted issues that were documented?
I think there was a lot of really interesting work on poverty. I mean, Peter Van Achtermel, the photographer, went really deep digging into poverty in cities across the United States, in rural areas, rural poverty as well. And I'm just looking at the show right now out in front of me. So I think he spent a lot of time on immigration. I think he spent a lot of time on racial issues and racial tensions and racism in the United States. Really, really crucial issues to where this country's been and where it's going. So I think he tackled all kinds of stuff. He tackled, he was at the January 6th sort of assault on the Capitol. First time in American history where protesters have overrun the U.S. Capitol. So the show is just full of evidence of so many different key moments in American history.
These photographs span from 2006 to 2021. How have you seen these conversations around these issues change over time?
Personally, I'd say there's a lot more emphasis today, a lot more emphasis on race. There's more emphasis on poverty today, I'm seeing. Obviously, the right, former President Trump and the right has been really focused on immigration and trying to halt immigration into this country. And one of the interesting things is this exhibition also looks a lot at Europe, and there are similar movements in France and Germany. There's sort of a strong anti-immigration backlash that's built in Europe, and Peter examines that backlash. He examines the plight of the migrants who are basically just trying to survive, and need a refuge. So I think there has been an evolution in some of these discussions, particularly, of course, since George Floyd. I think the conversation about race has just become really forefront, and previously in America, it wasn't something we talked about as much.
I feel like I agree. And although I wasn't in those conversations, during 2006, I feel like we talk about it a lot more, which kind of leads me to this question. Do you think an exhibit like this would be around in 2006? Or maybe some of the other exhibits that you guys put on, do you think it would have been received the same in 2006?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, we've always tried to do challenging exhibitions, and we're focused on discussion and debate. We don't all have to agree with each other. We've always done challenging stuff, but I think certainly, I think race in particular and a lot of issues around poverty, we're seeing, well, that's something in America's past. And people don't believe that anymore. They believe that it's here and now, it's forefront, and people want to discuss it, find resolutions, work together, so and hold people to account.
What has the response been like from the community?
We've had a great response. Mostly we've had, the opening was packed. Last week we had over 100 school children come to visit the show. So from middle schools here in the Bronx. And they were fascinated by the images. They asked a lot of questions. There were so many things they didn't know about. So, every exhibition is a chance for us to learn, for me to learn, for the children to learn. They came, they didn't know about the conflicts. They were fascinated to learn about American foreign policy, issues at home, here in the U.S. There were some really good, some 12 and 13-year-olds. They asked some great questions.
So I want to touch on that aspect of age, because I think of, college students or young adults interacting with these types of issues. But I think that there has been an arena for people who are even way younger to kind of join in this conversation. How do you tackle teaching a really young child about some dark stuff in our history or stuff that's happening even right now?
Yeah, well, we don't show, when we get the younger children, we don't show them any violent issues. We cover any photos of violence we cover, because obviously we don't want to traumatize the kids or upset them. But, the kids today are way more aware than when I was growing up. So they know a fair amount. They know about the war in Ukraine. They know about a fair number of social issues, and they ask really smart questions about it. So we're non-ideological at the Bronx Documentary Center. We're not Republican or Democrat. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to show you what has happened. We have accurate captions on the wall. We have discussions with the photographers, and even at a young age, we let the kids make up their own minds. So we're not here to tell them what to think.
That's amazing. Now, how long will this actually be up for?
The show is up through June 26th. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the afternoons, or by appointment if somebody needs to come at a different time. So we'll be here through almost through the end of June. So there's a lot of time to come to see it.
Now, when you're covering sensitive issues, do you have any fear of how it will be received, especially in this day and age? Because although people have become more comfortable talking about issues of racism, I feel like the opposite has also happened, where people are more comfortable talking about things that they don't like in regards to race and religion and stuff like that. So how do you handle that?
It's a tough environment out there. It's a tough environment because no matter what you do, you can be attacked on social media. It used to be people had to come and talk to you to your face. Now they can just, slander you on the internet. So that's troubling, but there's nothing we can do. We can't hide from that. We've got to do the work, get the work out there. One of the beauties of America is there's freedom of speech here. So everybody doesn't have to like what we do. Everybody doesn't have to agree, but hopefully they'll come and they'll look at the work and have a discussion about it.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about the BDC in general. I know that you kind of interact with different generations. So you talked about children, stuff with seniors. Can you tell us a little bit more about those programs that are catered to them?
Sure. Yeah, our children's programs are really focused on photography and writing. Our kids do a lot of writing. They learn to do research. They learn to do the 5 W's of journalism, who, when, what, where, why. To check things for accuracy. We teach some media literacy, so they know the difference between the New York Post and the New York Times and other sources of information, which I think is really crucial in America today. With our high schoolers, there's a big focus on college applications, college readiness. SAT. We just did SAT prep this weekend. We help with financial aid, all those types of things. So we teach them a lot of journalism and photography, but we're also preparing them to go on and be successful in life, even though, we don't expect many of them to be photographers, but we hope that our education helps them in some positive way. And then with the senior programs, we work with different senior centers around the Bronx, and a lot of that is field trip based. So we go with the seniors on different field trips around New York City, the Bronx Botanical Garden, different museums, Central Park, etc. And really getting them out and giving them sort of access to photograph and learn about photography and visit parts of the city that, a lot of seniors don't have a lot of mobility, they don't have cars, so it's hard for them to get around. So we really try to get them out as often as possible into the city.
Now, I really like to learn a little bit more about your relationship with Peter, because I know you guys worked together before, and I actually covered that event. It was a Trump Revolution event, that was my first time seeing that kind of exhibit. What inspires you to continue those relationships with some of these photographers?
Well, we really feel like photography and photojournalism is at the forefront of, it's really at the forefront of American history. And I think if you look back at key moments in the last 100 years, a lot of what you're looking at is photographs, documentary photos and photojournalism, news photographers that were there on the front lines. I worked with Peter in Iraq. We both covered the war in Iraq for many years, so I've known him a long time, and he's really giving testimony. And you can look at his photos and say, again, you can draw your own conclusions, but the jumping off point is the evidence. Peter was right there. He was right on the front lines. He's showing you what happened on any given day. And I just think that's it's still important. I always say I got to New York in the 1980s and people were saying, well, photography's dead. It's not important anymore, but it's always important and it always keeps coming back.
Can you let people know how they can actually support your organization?
Sure. Yeah, you can go to www.bronxdoc.org. It's BRONXDOC.org. We're always looking for volunteers. We've got events. We've got a great photo library. We've got, we need mentors sometimes. So there's a whole number of things that we need help with here. Of course, if you're wealthy, we're always looking for donations.
All right.
But really what we need mostly is volunteers and people just coming, bringing friends, bringing family, and helping to get these discussions going.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Treyster.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
Welcome back. With a mission to empower young women and girls to be strong, smart, and bold, organization Girls Inc. NYC hosts their annual Lifting Girls Up Gala. Joining me to discuss the gala and their efforts is April Williams, VP of Programs at Girls Inc. Thank you so much for joining us, April.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, could you tell me about your organization Girls Inc. of New York City and your upcoming gala?
Awesome. Yes, of course. Girls Inc. of New York City inspires all girls to be strong, smart, and bold by delivering life-transforming programs to girls and young women throughout New York City. Through education and advocacy, we prepare girls to navigate gender, economic, and social barriers to advance to a more equitable world. This year, we are on track to serve nearly 10,000 girls across New York City, and our gala, Lifting Girls Up, is going to help us get there.
Now, I know for the gala, you will be honoring a few women. Can you tell me about the women that you're honoring?
Of course. We are honoring this year Tasunda Brown Duckett, who is the president and CEO of TIAA, Lala Anthony, actress, producer, and philanthropist, Beatrice Dixon, the founder and CEO of the Honey Pot Company, and Janice Reels Ellick, who is the CEO of the Ellick Group. Each of these visionary women have elevated women's representation in top levels of leadership and have dedicated their careers to advancing the interests of women and girls. So we are so excited to have them be honored at this year's gala.
And I will definitely add that I think that is kind of like an amazing lineup of women. Your organization chooses women to honor based on the strides they took to break down barriers for other women. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that process?
Yes. The process is an organic one. Often we are already working in partnership and being supported by amazing women leaders whom we then decide to honor at the gala with our Strong, Smart, and Bold Leadership Award. And then other times, there are people in our community that recommend key women figures who are making a difference, and honoring them at the gala is really just the start of the fruitful partnership for us, which is the case with Beatrice Dixon in the Honey Pot.
Now, I know all of those women actually are in positions of power, and I'm sure that even the women who aren't being honored, but just in the room, kind of hold this air or just have this power with them. Can you just tell us what it's like? Of course, it's inspirational, but what it's like navigating having that much power and that much confidence as a woman?
Yeah, it is. I will say it is one that I do not take lightly. I have had an amazing village of women that have supported me. I am born and raised in the Bronx, New York, South Bronx specifically. And the Bronx has been a part of raising this, amazing leader. And so I think as a woman of color, as a leader, there's so much that we bring to spaces that we're carrying. The work and hearts and all of the goals and dreams of our ancestors that got us here. And then just to sort of be that representation in the communities that we're serving. I take that as a high honor that I am able to specifically lead in a community that gave so much to me, to give back to girls that look like me and that will be able to see themselves in me. It's something that I am so honored by.
Now, I love that you bring up just girls who look like you and girls from certain communities. I think that oftentimes when we're talking about just women empowerment or girl empowerment, it can be easy for girls from certain communities to feel invisible. So I think it's amazing that you kind of highlight them. Can you just explain a little bit further why it's so important to provide continuous support to women and girls of these communities?
Yes, for sure. Right. What we know for sure is that when we keep adolescent girls happy, healthy, safe, and in school, and really give them the skills to have a say in their own lives, to create their own narratives, they have a path to a healthy, productive adulthood. They are better able to gain knowledge and have more earning power. Society as a whole benefits. And so it's imperative that we continue to invest in quality programs that empower girls to speak up and make informed decisions that not only impact them, but their families and communities.
I also think it's super important because I know for other girls of other communities, they may have outlets like school and other things that can help strengthen their identity as young women. And I think that sometimes in low income communities, those outlets sometimes don't always have the funding, or it just doesn't have what they need to help those girls be better. So I appreciate organizations like your own kind of filling in those gaps. For this year's gala, there will be a focus on education. Can you explain why Girls Inc. wanted to go with that theme for this year?
Yes, this gala is so exciting to me this year because this year specifically, we chose to combine our college shower, which is historically our send-off celebration for our college-bound high school seniors. And this year, we're combining it with the gala because we not only wanted to celebrate the students on a bigger stage, but we also wanted to recenter the gala as a mission-focused event, right? Education, we know, is fundamental and key to success for so many girls. And yet, over the pandemic, we have faced so many hurdles and setbacks on that front. And so it's critical that we focus on getting young people's education, which includes their social emotional development, back on track. And Girls Inc. of New York City is working hard to do just that.
What do you hope women and girls learn from this gala?
Yeah, we hope that they learn about the amazing strides that Girls Inc. of New York City is taking to transform the lives of so many girls living in poverty. For example, Her Future, which is a financial literacy program that is funded by Google, will really transform girls' relationship with money by strengthening their financial capabilities through experiential education and exciting new technology. And then we also have Equality Can't Wait, which is funded by Melinda Gates and Mackenzie Scott. And that will address the inequality in the workplace, particularly the absence of women of color in positions of influence and leadership. Additionally, we really hope that all the attendees will be inspired, not only by the honorees, but by the student graduates, and know that despite all of the obstacles and setbacks that we, ourselves and the girls have faced over these last couple of years, that change is happening. We see the change. And Girls Inc. of New York City and our partners are a big part of driving that change.
Now, what I love about what you're telling me is that you also focus on the real life consequences that face women, because I think sometimes organizations tend to just only look at the positive, but these things don't exist within a vacuum, right? So we have to kind of address these things for these young girls. How do you address, or how do you speak to young women and girls about societal issues that they may be facing?
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things that I love about Girls Inc. is that it's based on real experience, and we really work to have dialogue with girls, right, and have real conversation about topics and issues that are relevant to them, that are affecting them daily. And so a couple of those programs, just to name a few, are Mind Body Matters, which is incredibly amazing. It is a program that is focused on mental health, and it's specifically for girls of color. We have launched that in more than 30 schools across New York City, really focusing on helping girls identify strategies that will really allow for them to better cope with day-to-day stressors such as anxiety, feelings of depression, a lot of those things which they felt during the pandemic. We also have our data analytics program called Generation Giga Girl that really teaches girls about the importance of data using social justice or through a social justice lens. We have our financial literacy program, which I mentioned earlier, that transforms our girls' relationship with money. And then, of course, we have our Project Reach program, which focuses on college retention and persistence. All of our programs are facilitated not only during the school day, but after school. The after school setting, we know, allows for the girls to have more space to really delve into topics and things that are of interest to them. And then in a lot of these cases, our girls are also able to receive credit for participating in these courses, which is an added bonus.
Well, I want to touch on the part where you talked about mental health, because I think that is so important. And I know for communities of color, and I guess from my own experience, Black communities, that can be a difficult topic. Why would you say it's so important to kind of start young in teaching young Black women about mental health at this point in their lives?
Yeah, it's so important because mental health, as we know, has been at the forefront of many conversations prior to the pandemic. But once we got into the pandemic, we saw many of our girls, specifically girls of color, dealing with social isolation on such a massive level. The rates of suicide, we know, were increasing. And so starting to talk to our girls about what were some of those challenges that they were facing. I think a lot of times we feel like we wait until we're in adulthood, and being able to talk to young people earlier about identifying and being able to talk about what their emotions are or how they're feeling, and really help them to come up with some of those strategies. So it's been amazing to see our girls doing things like art therapy, guided meditation, yoga, all of those things that are going to just help them be better, right? We know if you are better mentally, it just makes you a much more productive person once you are in the working world.
Now, the gala is happening later tonight. Can you just explain what you're most excited or most looking forward to?
Yes, I'm so excited to see our college or our girls that are preparing to go to college. We are honoring 25 amazing high school seniors this evening. And, we have not seen so many people, so many of our partners in more than 2 years in person. And so to be able to celebrate our girls at such, a magnitude is going to be so amazing. So I'm excited to see our girls tonight who are being honored and celebrated for their amazing accomplishments this year.
How can viewers watching support the efforts of Girls Inc. of New York?
On our website, of course, girlsincnyc.org, viewers can support our programs. They can also donate, subscribing to our newsletter. We're also always looking for volunteers in our schools. And you can also follow us on social media through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, April, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back. The NYC Department of Youth and Community Development's Summer Youth Employment Program has served New York City youth for decades. Joining me to discuss the program and what employers can do to hire work-ready youth is Dior Lunsford, CareerReady Program Manager at the NYC Department of Youth and Community Development. Dior, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you actually tell me about your department's Summer Youth Employment Program?
Yeah. So SYP, the Summer Youth Employment Program, is actually the oldest and largest youth employment program in the nation. So we started way back in 1963, and next year will be our 60th anniversary. This year we are looking at 100,000 participants, which is record-breaking for us. So a huge thank you to our Mayor, Eric Adams, for his unprecedented investment in summer youth.
Now, the program offers an opportunity for career exploration and project-based learning. Can you elaborate on what this means for a teen or a young adult?
Yeah, so career exploration is actually at the forefront of the SYP experience for all of our participants. While earning either a stipend or salary, young people are encouraged to both research and participate in career fields that they find interesting. And we have plenty of fields from engineering to information technology, finance, healthcare, and so much more. Participants that are 14 to 15, they are considered our younger youth, and they participate in our project-based learning, whereas the older youth between the ages of 16 to 24, they experience the more traditional work experience.
Now, how would you say or how have you seen your program impact New York City youth?
So SYP offers life-changing experiences to young people who discover their passions, they connect with a mentor, and just gain the confidence to really successfully navigate a workplace. I'm a program manager now, but previously I was an outreach specialist, which means that I was interviewing employers on the ground, and you'd be surprised by how many were SYP participants and just wanted to give this experience back to someone else.
Now, how are participants selected for this program?
So participants are selected either through the lottery or direct recruitment. If they apply through our community-based contract, then they are going to be selected for the lottery. But then we also have special initiatives where DYCD works with our providers and partners to select and identify vulnerable youth. Or on the CareerReady aspect, we work with our providers and schools, more specifically principals, to identify participants for SYP.
Now, can you actually tell me a little bit about your experience just being a part of the program?
Yeah. So I love it here. I moved up from an outreach specialist, and I stayed on for both our WLG, which is our work, learn, and grow contracts, to our SYP contracts. And previously, when I was an outreach specialist, I got to actually interact with the participants and the employers and hear their stories. And honestly, I just love that part of the job because a lot of the kids are just so grateful to be experiencing something new. And yeah, it's no words.
Okay, I think that's really cool. I'm so happy you shared that. I was actually a part of SYEP growing up, and it was a super popular just thing that everyone did. So that's why I'm super excited to have you here to talk about this. As I said, it was super popular. Can you explain the importance of having this opportunity just be available to youth like myself, children from the Bronx or Brooklyn or just around the city? Why is it so important for them to have this opportunity?
It's actually funny that you said the Bronx and your experience because both of my parents were participants of SYP. They participated back in the 80s, and my dad lived in Castle Hill, and he cleaned up graffiti. So we definitely see the impact. And also, youth unemployment rates are still at an all-time high in the United States. Programs like SYP do help to close that gap a bit. So we're just very happy to do that.
I love that you shared that your parents did it before. I think that's just so amazing that it could kind of be like a generational thing and not just like, oh, my friend did it or my brother did it, but like also my parents did it. So I hope we have SYEP just for years to come because I just think that's amazing. Now, shifting gears just a little bit, we want to talk about the role that employers play in the SYEP program. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yep. So the employers are literally the backbone to SYP. Recently, last week, we had SYP Spirit Week, where each day was targeting someone else. So for Wednesday, we had Worksite Wednesday, where we were asking all of our applicants to hit their social media platforms and at their dream employer, what is your dream job and why is that your dream job? And our employers engagement team here, they have been monitoring those posts and they're trying to make those connections happen.
Now, what are the benefits of employers hiring SYEP participants?
So, by hiring SYEP participants, not only are you helping to build the city's economy, but you're actually shaping the workforce of tomorrow, which is just huge. So, also, something I'd like to note, SYEP provides participants with a very diverse set of skills. So not only are they knowledgeable in social media, but they are helping for digital technology and really assisting their worksite representatives who might not be as technologically advanced.
Now, according to nyc.gov, hiring young people is a direct investment in the economic recovery of New York. Can you just further explain why?
Yeah, so young people becoming a part of New York City's workforce and filling positions in government agencies, organizations, and private organizations are just very important at a time like this where workers are sorely needed. Um, the more that SYP thrives, the city definitely thrives.
Now, since we're talking about recovery, I kind of want to talk about COVID a little bit because I know SYEP was affected heavily by COVID, and it also did affect a lot of our city's youth. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, so in 2020, despite COVID-19, we were able to still power through. We switched all of our work sites to remote. And then in 2021, we came back stronger than ever with 75,000 participants and over 14,000 work sites. And we were able to offer our participants not only remote work sites, but now we were going back to in person and a hybrid of the two. So, regardless of COVID-19, we made sure that our protocols were always up to standard and that our youth would still have a chance to experience their youth.
Now, I know there was also a little bit of a scare for some teenagers who thought that SYEP wasn't going to come back during the pandemic. What were your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on the fact that, what if we did kind of live in a city where there was no SYEP?
So we were scared as well. After 2020, when we were suspended, we were very grateful to have come back. I think that SYP definitely alters New York City and it separates us from other states because unfortunately, not all states have employment programs at this mass scale that are able to accommodate their kids. And SYP, because we do have so many projected participants, we're also looking to outsource for work sites. So if you're watching this and you are a work site that isn't in New York City, we have remote internships and jobs available.
Okay, that's perfect because that leads into my next question. Are there any changes to this program following COVID that both employers and participants should be aware of or that they should know?
Yep. So after COVID, it was a lot of trial and error, and we learned so many best practices that now that COVID-19 is beginning to subside, we continue to follow these best practices, and our young people are our top priority. Their safety, sorry, is our top priority. So SYP does continue to follow the city's guidelines.
Now, SYEP is an amazing opportunity for children or just for young adults. I think I did it about 3 times. So I was super lucky. Can you tell people, I know the deadline is over for participants, but this is an annual activity or program that happens every year. Can you just tell people what they should do to apply?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, nyc.gov/SYP for more information. It'll show you the required documents and the dates for next year to apply. But although we have missed the deadline for applicants, worksites can still apply. The deadline is June 6th. You can also go to nyc.gov/SYP.
And what advice would you give, to an employer and to a participant if they're interested in joining the SYEP team?
Put your application in. Honestly, this year we're just going more and more and more. We're growing every single year. If you're worried that you might not be selected by the lottery, don't be. Honestly, throw your application in there and we hope to see you this summer.
All right, Dior, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's all for our show today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kibin, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.